Welcome to Insight Builder channel, large language model automators, Python experts, and my dear friends. Automate pipelines in TxtAi using 7 tasks and workflows. Combining pipelines and Lambda functions in TxtAi. What is the challenge that is solved by workflows and tasks? In single word, it is data handling. The output of one model or one particular task is easily directed to the next step without taking the input or output as a separate variables. This saves a lot of confusion, and it helps to make the code more readable. So that is the last point that I've mentioned here. The tasks, pipelines, and Python functions, all of these can be subparts of workflows, and workflow itself can be a part of a workflow. So it is kind of a recursive loop that goes into the concept of workflows that is taken in TxtAi. We'll be seeing some of the examples in a couple of minutes, so you'll understand what is the benefit of chaining these tasks, the workflows together. The error, as I was telling, when you don't take the output frequently and try to parse it, but continuously move the output to the next activity or the task, the chance of error actually reduces drastically, and you are not required to test each of the steps, like each of the functions separately. So once you make the Lambda function or the Python function, or even the model pipeline, and you add it to the workflow, then the entire the workflow setup itself does the testing for you. So it's pretty intuitive once you look at it. The modular nature of the workflow makes it easy to understand. So that is something that I already spoke about. Okay, when it comes to tasks in workflow, there are actually more than another 3 more tasks that I have not listed here because it's pretty confusing to really work with. So I have not covered it here. I will be covering it in the future once I have the proper place where those tasks can help to solve some problems. So any particular program or any particular class construct in the libraries are meant for solving some of the problems. That is why it is getting written, correct? We have the task that can be initiated with Lambda or pipeline function. So this helps in parsing the Lambda functions and pipeline functions outputs. There can be multi-action tasks. What I mean by this is, what TxtAi means by this is, there can be more than one Lambda function that can be inside a single task, and how these functions are clubbed together is also a separate topic that we'll be discussing once we go into the example. So multi-action task is pretty interesting. In fact, it's confusing to be honest in the beginning, but once you get a hang of it, then you are going to use it a lot more than other options available. Coming to console task, we can output the workflow data to the console. That is, it's like a print function. We have file task. This one, at this moment, I am confident in explaining how it reads the file, but in case of writing files, still I am not confident. Let me get back to you on that. Image task reads the image from the path and converts it to image object. Retrieve tasks works like wget. In case of if you have been following a couple of videos earlier, we used to get the data, the tar file or the zip file from somewhere in the internet, most probably from the GitHub repos, and use it locally. So those steps we can do it with retrieve task. And we have template task. This is very similar to prompt templates that you must have come across in various libraries like LangChain, Haystack, etc. Now what we are going to do is we are going to jump into the examples. Before that, I just want to give you a heads up how these examples are arranged. See, the examples, I have not taken any kind of real world examples for discussing here. This is more of a toy examples that I'm going to share it, because that is what actually makes it easier to understand these tasks. I tried working with real world examples, but it is really difficult to show how these tasks, how these workflows and pipelines do interact. I use a couple of examples with real world details, but I refrain from it as much as possible. Each of these examples can act as a solution for some unique situation. So what is the intention of these examples, or what is the intention of this particular video, is to discuss about a couple of heuristics or solutions that TxtAi's tasks and workflows offers, and share it with you guys. Maybe when you are working in your project, when you are working with your task that you are doing with some kind of data processing and data handling, maybe you can actually pull the TxtAi library and start working with them. The point here is that, see, all of the libraries have their own strengths and weaknesses. And when it comes to TxtAi, the strength of TxtAi is that it can chain multiple tasks together, and it automates lots of model related, artificial intelligence model related automation, etc. But it has its fair share of challenges also. So it's when you are going to work with the data that is sequential, it is very useful, because you are going to send in lots of data into the pipeline. Then it is useful to set it up using TxtAi. But if you are going to work with one-off calls to the functions or the pipelines, then it doesn't make sense, right? And so there are places where you can think about using TxtAi, like if you want to read through a lot of comments in couple of your tools, if you want to work with messaging apps that you want to, or if you want to work with embedding lots of images. We have already discussed these use cases already. TxtAi has numerous examples that discuss about the benefits of TxtAi. So I'm whatever I am will be telling will be a very small list of what is exactly possible. But again, most important point is that the notebook has been shared with the examples inside the GitHub repo. The link will be shared with you guys in the below description, YouTube video description. You can take a look at that. The intention of asking you to practice is that you can recall the heuristic or the examples faster if you have already practiced it. And when you are working on a task, or when you are discussing with your team members on a possible solution, you can immediately pull the example that you want to share it with them. This becomes very important, because I have been trying to work with my friends and colleagues, etc., and there would be certain challenges that comes up to them, and they discuss with me that how to solve this, and I immediately share them some of the examples that I know that can solve the problem they are having. Most of the times it's not about having the problem solving capability by yourself. It's about like the heuristics. So there are already problems that are solved, and only thing is that we need to remember and recollect how the problems were solved. With that said, I would like to move to the browser. Before that, I hope that you like this content. Leave a like, share it with others, because these are heuristics and problem solution data details. So it will be better to share it and discuss with your friends, colleagues and team members to brainstorm the various ways you can use these libraries, because that will give you more insight into how you can work more effectively and solve the problems that your product, your team or your company might be solving. With that said, I hope that we will go to the browser right now. If you are new to TxtAi and the models, artificial intelligence models as such, and you are coming fresh to NLP tasks and vision tasks, I would suggest that take a look at this particular playlist in my YouTube channel, Mastering NLP with Hugging Face and related artificial intelligence models. You will get the necessary videos that introduce the Hugging Face models, tasks, and also it goes on and introduces various libraries like 2V, and it also introduces the various steps or parts of TxtAi engine, that is TxtAi library. So you will get a overall picture very fast. With that said, the link for the notebook is the GitHub repo is already uploaded with the notebook. So I'll be sharing this link with you guys. Let us go to the workflow. So let us go to the Collab notebook where we will start the process. I will be explaining let the Collab notebook start, and let me initiate a couple of cells. Let me run a couple of cells so that by the time I explain, the cells would have already gotten fresh. Okay, so what happens in case of a task? Task is a class construct or a class that is inside the workflow module. Let me zoom in a bit so that you guys can see better. Yeah, I suppose that should be big enough. The task is under the workflow module, and task has to contain an action. So action is basically a pipeline or a Lambda function, or it could be a workflow also. Now, when you see this Lambda function, so you can immediately understand intuitively that, okay, X is going to be a list, and because you are using a list comprehension here, and each of these elements will be multiplied by 2 when I pass an X or pass a list to this particular function. This is clear, right? When you are going to have a single function and you are going to have a single input and output, this function will be more than sufficient. When you are going to work with the series of inputs, and this series of inputs needs to be further modified. So for an example, after you multiply that by the elements by 2, you want to subtract it as a second step. Then what will happen is you can actually use both of these tasks as separate tasks, and you can start working with them. You can start moving the input from one task to another task by just calling these tasks together inside the workflow. So we'll be seeing that in a moment, right? So if you are going to work with the task alone, so all you need to do is call the task and give the list to it. So it will by default start working on it. And here, let you see this is the workflow that I am initiating, and you see I am calling T1 and T3. So the task name is T1 and T3 here, and after that all I need to do is just send it a list. So this list enters into task 1, gets processed there, and it enters into task 3, gets processed there, and the output is provided to us. And this workflow is a generator, so it's going to evaluate lazily until unless you need the output. That is, until unless you put this particular workflow into a for loop or into a list or into a position where it's going to yield the data, till then it is not going to provide you the output. So that is in one way beneficial, because when you're going to work with pipelines that involve a lot of steps and lot of huge models inside it, having such a lazy evaluation can save you a lot of time in your debugging. So that is one of the benefits that you get. And you see I have already installed TxtAi all. Actually, you don't need to. You can, if you're working with workflow, then you can use TxtAi workflow library, workflow module alone. But still, I prefer to get down all the TxtAi library, because anyway, when you are installing in your local system, you would have the entire library installed, correct? So that is one of the things that I am doing. So let me get back to you once this library, yeah, it's done. So I told you, right, the task is getting initiated right now. And you see, this is a summary pipeline that I've created. So this summary pipeline will have a Hugging Face model, summarization model that is required, and it is already pulling it the moment I initiate this task. And that it actually stores it inside the RAM and it keeps it ready, right? And the task 2 is ready, and task 3 is a Lambda function. So you see the task 2 is getting built up right now. So almost 1.2 GB of summarization model is getting pulled. So this is the model name that is getting pulled to the local environment, and it will get uploaded into the RAM. So you will see in a moment that once the pulling is completed, you will see the RAM got increased. You see that, right? From 1.7 it came to 4.2. So this is what I was talking about. So all these things are automated. So when you call this summary pipeline, we don't realize that it is going to do a lot of these activities. Okay, so we have all the 3 tasks ready. If I only work with task 2, so all I need to do is call workflow and give the task 2, and it does the summarization. So if I give a sentence to it, it will summarize it. Here anyway, this particular sentence is not able to be summarized further, so it is not doing anything more. Okay, this is just an example that I'm sharing. The fun starts when you are going to pull multiple tasks together. So when I actually pull 2,8, when I pull task T1 and T3 together and stitch it together in workflow, what will happen is this 2,8 will go into Lambda, that is T1, and become 4,16, correct? Because 2 into 2 is 4 and 8 into 2 is 16. So it will become 4,16, and then it will get moved to T3. The 4, 16 will be passed. So 4 minus 2 will be 2 and 16 minus 2 will be 14. So that is the output you are getting here. This is what I was talking about. You are not actually taking each of these outputs separately and then passing them in. This is a huge benefit that you will see as we go down into further complicated steps. Let me show you where it will be more useful, right? Now, you can do two kinds of task activities. So either you can have these actions as separate tasks, like I have one action inside this task T1 and I have another action inside this task T3, correct? I can also have multi-action, that is, in a single task, I can have both the multiplication as well as subtraction action inside that. But what happens is when you are going to link such kind of actions together, we have to decide how the variables or how the data between the actions gets moved to the next action. So there is a lambda action where it is getting multiplied, and there is lambda action where there is subtraction happening. How it gets moved? In case of the default, that is unpack equal to false or unpack equal to true with column equal to 0, the action, the process is very similar to how this particular tasks work, how this particular workflow worked. Like T1 and T3, it goes serially. So there is no any change in that. You can be rest assured that you will get the output as it is. But what happens when you put it inside the multi-action is the output actually becomes a little weird. So you see here the output when you say unpack equal to true, what happens? The output is actually in each step, each action is given separate output. So in case of just a minute. So this is something little difficult to initially understand. So what happens is that when you are going to create a multi-action task, each of the element goes through these steps individually. So for an example, the element number 2 goes into first action and it is returned as 4, and again element number 2 goes into second action in parallel. Right, both of these actions are taken in parallel for each of this element, and we get a tuple out. You see this? You get the tuple out, and same way the second is also happening the same way. This kind of a solution that you are looking here might be useful in certain cases. So as I'm telling right now, these are examples which are toy examples. As I explained, these could be solutions in certain situations. Only you need to practice it to understand when you can use it. So as I'm telling right now, these are solutions which I don't know for which problem you can use it. Like there is hammer actually here with me, but I don't know where is a nail. So now the next step. So if I'm going to use unpack equal to false and unpack equal to true, the output is not going to be different, and you can actually have multiple elements. It's not just 2 elements, you can have multiple elements also, and you can send it through these. The actual difference starts happening when you are going to start using HStack and VStack. So when you are going to use merging option, what happens is the way the tuples get merged becomes different. So when you're going to use VStack, you see the output becomes a single list. It is not set of tuples, correct? And when you use concat, you see the output is actually concatenated, but it concatenated like a string. These integers are concatenated into strings. But when you look at the HStack, that is horizontal stack, you see that it is not different from any of the regular option that you are using. So by default, the multi-action tasks have the merge option to be HStack. Okay, that is something that you guys have to be aware. And this is very similar to how extend works in list. So what I'm trying to say is that let us go back to the PDF for a moment. The first 2 items that we are discussing, the task with lambda or pipeline function and multi-action task, both involve lambda and pipeline. It can involve pipeline and lambda functions, and it can have different ways of taking the inputs and providing the returning the outputs. So this is something that you guys have to internalize it by practicing it. It does not happen in an hour, so it takes a considerable amount of working with different inputs and different outputs to see how the things work out. Here, as you have seen here, I have myself created various kinds of tasks and various versions of the same multi-action steps, where I have various arguments like unpack equal to true, unpack equal to false, column equal to 0, column with 0, 0 mapping 0 and 1 mapping 1, and I have tried to work out what kind of changes happen in the output. Okay, so there are two ways to learn things. So either you use the documentation and understand what is written there, or you look at the examples and inherently, I mean, by using the outputs, or by using the pattern recognition that is innately available with us, we can learn what the functions or what the class constructs do more easily. So this is the route I have taken, where to recognize the pattern and learn the functions. That is what I have taken in these examples. So you can suit yourself. You can try to read the TxtAi examples also, but along with the documentation on these examples, you can learn the documentation very fast. Okay, so this is about the multi-action and basic Lambda tasks that I am talking about. Next is coming to the console task. So for console task, I am going to take an additional task that I am creating an additional task which returns the length of the elements. So why I'm doing this, I will show it in a moment. And this particular task is going to be part of this workflow, the new workflow, which will measure the length, or get the length, work on this particular multi-action task, and then it will output the data to the console. So as you can see here, let me execute this, because I need the T5 task here. And once I execute this, here I am giving in 2 sentences. And what happens, you can actually see this is a multi-step workflow, right? You will see that initially the length of the input list is found out, and this length actually goes into T5 tasks. So this is a multi-action task, and then it goes into console task. So where the console task shows what is the input that is given to the console task and what is the output that comes out, and finally prints the output also. So you see the entire process that happens here. So you can try to understand this particular step. It's pretty simple. You can try to figure it out. This could be an exercise for you guys also. Next is the export task. This is something that I am not covering right now. I'll be getting back to you later. The file task. So the file task reads the file that is available locally, and you can take any of the files that you have got, text files, and put it inside the collab notebook. Change the names and try to read it. Here what I have done is I have taken the file task that reads the content, and then reads the content in the sense it actually finds whether the content is available or not in the location or the path that you have provided. And once that is ascertained, then it moves that information to the data.read task. So this particular task that I've created here. So this basically opens the file path and reads it, and then the console tasks outputs the data. So just give me a moment. So I have uploaded 2 of my text files that is already available inside the repo itself, the GitHub repo, and I'm going to execute this particular workflow. And once I execute this, so you can see that once I execute this workflow, not this workflow has nothing. So it is not doing anything. It is just looking at whether the outputs are there. Okay, so let me remove this, and you'll see that it will still output. So if I execute this, the file task will still output the content that I'm giving it to it. It is not going to do anything, whether it is not going to check whether such a file is available or not. So this is something which is confusing at times when you're working with the workflows or tasks inside TxtAi. When I use this file task along with another pipeline or another Lambda function or another Python function, then this actually gets separate abilities. Okay, here I'm not showing that example. If you see the TxtAi examples documentation, you will see that file task can be linked with TextTractor. It can be linked with the summarizer, pipeline, etc. Okay, that I'm not showing it here because it is not intuitive. At least to me, I was not feeling very intuitive with that. But when I am using it here, so for in this workflow which I am right now going to show you, I can clearly see that I'm sending this file inside these two files. That is let me change this because it's going to be Wimplay, not the other one. So let me remove that. So I'm sending two files inside and I get the output as I expect. So two files are sent in, it is getting read, and okay, so there is an error here. What is an error? No such file or directory. Okay, so there is a mistake in the file name. So let me remove the file name. So as I told you that when you are going to place this file task along with other respective tasks, it gets a different kind of output. So this is what I was talking about. So you can execute these things and you can see it. So this is one of the quirks of TxtAi. That's what I should say. And I tried doing a data write. It doesn't work the same way as data read works. But anyway, I will get back to you with further understanding after I experiment with it. Okay, next is going to be image flow. So image task is something that I can really understand very easily. So what we see is that there is already some of the examples provided earlier. We can use the images that we get from TxtAi GitHub repo. And here what we are doing is we are taking the image, we are creating the image task, we are creating a caption task. So caption is a pipeline that you can, that is by default coded inside TxtAi, which reads the image and gives the caption out. And the console task. All these three tasks are stitched together in a single workflow. So I'm going to execute this. You will see that, okay, before executing this, I need to also get the files from the internet, from the GitHub, NewML GitHub repo. You see that a caption model is getting downloaded. The VIT GPT Coco model is getting installed right now, and it will be installed into the RAM in some time. After that, I will also get the necessary image files from this GitHub repo, TxtAi GitHub repo. Just give me a moment. So you see that the model has been completed, and you see all these files have been downloaded to the local repo. So next step, what you are going to do is we are going to read all these JPEG files. How are we going to do that is going to be the fun part. What happens here is that all I am doing is I am globbing this entire folder and looking at the JPEG files, and I am sending, when you glob a particular folder and use the what is this called, this way of regular expression to find the files, whichever is of the format JPEG, this actually forms a list. So I am sending that list into the workflow, which is how the workflow wants the data, and then it becomes a generator. After that, I am listing out the output. So once I execute this, you will see that all the steps will be shown to you. So the image task, where the files are read and converted to image, will be shown to you, and then caption task will happen, and then the console task will output the captions. So all these three will happen in this single flow. You see the benefit of these things. What happens is that I created all the necessary steps in one single cell inside the Jupyter notebook, and in another cell I am giving the input and I'm getting the output without any kind of difference. So this is the benefit of working with multi-task workflows. And it is also intuitive, right? You can explain, people who understand the task, caption task and console task can immediately find out what is going on. So it removes lots of code that needs to be written. In fact, if you are going to write image task separately, there is going to be multiple lines where you import libraries and convert the path into object, and then move the object to captioning inside the pipeline. That will have separate Hugging Face related, transform related pipelines. So you see that, right? All these things are abstracted away, and this is the output that you get. So this is the final output that you are looking for. And then we have retrieval task. So we currently used the wget here, correct? We use this wget to get the tests tar.gz. This same activity you can do it through retrieve task, and you can give the directory wherever you want to download it, and it will download it without any hassle. So this is something that you can try it out. It's very simple, and after you downloaded it, you will get the tests.tar.gz under content folder, or whichever folder you are asking it to download. So this is a pretty important and at the same time not very difficult to understand task. But once you club this with other tasks, so for an example, you download this particular content and you attach it with the Lambda function that unzips. So you can do that also. There is a way to use shutil in Python, which can call the unzip function and unzip this gz file. So you can actually make chains or workflows using the retrieval tasks also. So you can try that out as a practice. And next is template task. Service task I'm not going to concentrate right now. This is something that still I am trying to figure it out how it works. The examples are not still very clear, so I'm still not going to concentrate there. Coming to the template task. Template task is very simple, like how we use f strings in Python. So you create a template task, you give it a template string that you are going to use, and yeah, this looks a little roundabout way of doing things, but when you are going to use this template task as a part of the various other pipelines like extractor pipeline or working with caption pipeline, working with embedding pipeline, then this makes sense. So instead of using f strings in Python are called as string literals, where if you give a f like this, and if you have the variable name text, the value of the text will get replaced here. So template task is also useful. So take a look at this, how you can actually integrate that with other tasks and other workflows that I have shown here. So this is the last task that I want to discuss. I have also summarized the various tasks that I have covered in this particular notebook. With that said, let me go back to the presentation for a moment so that I can summarize what has happened. So we saw the various kinds of tasks that is available, and each task will have an action, which is basically a function, that is Python function or a pipeline that does some work on your data. And as we saw, that the workflow helps you to streamline the data processing activity, or as I call the data handling, is done very efficiently. So you are not looking at the data on each step of the process. The file task, the image task, the retrieval task, and the template task, we reviewed the examples, and we saw that these, from console task to template task, the solution that each of these tasks offers is very clear. But this multi-action task and task with Lambda function, you have to understand where you can implement these solutions. It's not that you know this, you should implement it. So sometimes these are not required. So the examples that I have shown here, or these actions that I have shared, are only for for your knowledge purpose. When you are trying to implement it in your code, ensure that this particular task or this particular way of implementation actually helps, and it makes efficient decision for your particular product. So with that said, I would like to come to the conclusion of this video. I hope that you like this video. Do leave a like and share it with others. Do subscribe to my channel for further videos on related Python libraries, to artificial intelligence models, large language models, and the overall ecosystem together. With that said, I would like to close this video with 4 words as usual, that is practice, 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 practice. See you guys. Have a great time.